Okay, and we are live, and welcome to Live Stage Radio. You are tuned into the ColdShot, and I'm your host, Len Pyros, and I want to thank you for bringing us into your homes tonight, for I promise you we have a great show lined up for you tonight. And before I get started, there's a few things I want to say. First thing is I hope everyone had a happy and safe Memorial Day weekend, and as we know, it's the kickoff to a rock and roll summer for 2018, so God bless everybody in that regard. And before I get started, I just want to say a special shout outs to a few people that I have to address. One is Lisa and Mike from The Rail for allowing us to broadcast live stage radio from this beautiful venue. Absolutely. Located in the heart of Smithtown, New York. And secondly, I have to thank Steve Rivera for all his hard work in making us the flyers and being in our corner. Joey Hanks for coming up with ideas and keeping me up on the straight and narrow. And of course, none of this would be possible if it wasn't for the fabulous Marinos. John and Nick for being our production, sound, video organizers and pulling this all together. None of this could happen without them. So join us on our journey as we take flight. And with that being said, again, thank you for tuning into Live Stage Radio. This is ColdShot. And I am beyond honored to have as my first guest to kick off the new season of ColdShot at Live Stage Radio, my man John Montalbano.
Thank you so much, man.
The man has credits, TV and film scores, singer, songwriter, composer, multi-instrumentalist, bassist extraordinaire. And what we're going to be covering here on the ColdShot is basically gears, gadgets, gizmos, guitars, and whatever else you want to bring to the table. So I want to thank you very much. It's an honor to have you here. So what's going on? I mean, there's so much, in researching you, there is just so much, I'm like, where do I start with this guy?
Well,
so
first, thank you and the Rail and everybody here for having me. It's, just to have a venue like this, on Long Island that embraces all styles of music. Not only cover bands, tribute bands, but also original music. Is really says a lot. For any music scene. I definitely want to say that to have an establishment that features live music is first of all a big it's dedication and a risk. Because you're kind of at the whims of what people want to see. So but thank you all for having me and my band My World for the last couple of shows as well, and your enthusiasm. I think this is a really cool forum, in a sense that you're bringing musicians, kind of getting a little bit more of a personal vibe.
You're trying to be a little bit more intimate and, really just giving, fans and people that may know you from a venue or a club, to get a little deeper into knowing what you're about, where you came from, and what to look forward to. And basically to create a platform and put the spotlight on people such as yourselves and all talent on Long Island and beyond, and give them something so people can see what they're doing and be able to showcase what they're about.
Very cool.
And that's what we're going to strive to do, and I think we're off to a damn good start.
Absolutely. Cool.
So, all right, so anyway, like I said, movie, TV scores, TV shows, Comedy Central. I'm going to start to the beginning. Okay, humble beginnings is how I like to start this out with. Why the bass guitar? And when? Okay, was anybody in your family musically inclined that you were influenced by?
No, actually. My parents, there was really no music in my family at all. I would say that I did get a lot of my creative side. My father went to school for fine art, so he was actually he went to school for fine art in Alaska, and when after he got his degree, he became like the junior curator. He got a job as a junior curator at the Guggenheim Museum, and but then he was drafted into the Korean War. So basically, from that point on, he was a draftsman. He did a lot of ship models and stuff like that. But my father always had this creative edge. He was the kind of person that we built basically one of my first instruments when I was about 14 years old. So I mean, I always loved the cello. That was my kind of first love.
Well, in researching you, I realized that it wasn't just necessarily the bass guitar. You were gravitated towards the cello,
Right?
which is a completely different
Right.
animal.
Absolutely.
And so how did you got into the cello? Did you learn cello music and get into it?
I was only into it from a listener's perspective at that stage. The schools that I went to didn't have a music program. So I went to a Catholic school, Mineola, Corpus Christi School, which they just tore down the building. It's really kind of sad, but they didn't have a music program. So I didn't really have the opportunity to learn music. But basically, I could always pick out a cello in any kind of music. I loved classical music.
Some beautiful music was written on the cello. It's very soothing.
Absolutely.
And very,
Definitely. Just movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I remember listening to movie soundtracks and being like, wow, that's it. And then basically there was a family down the street that had a number of kids in the family, and they had basically their garage was like a giant playground. They had so much stuff in it. And there was like a warped neck instrument. Well, I didn't know it was warped yet, but it was the headstock of a bass, and it was just sticking out of a cardboard box. So I said, "Can we play with that?" So sure enough, it was a bass guitar. It was like a little short scale bass. The neck was completely warped. It was pretty much unplayable. But I played with that thing for a long time. And
so you worked out, you woodshedded with it, and you learned
absolutely.
the ins and outs, even with a warped neck.
I made noise,
Do you remember what kind of bass it was? And do you still have it?
I do not have it, actually. I do not have it. It was some kind of, from Sears. It was like a Sears toy bass.
Okay.
So it was really nothing very serious. I remember my father actually did bring me to Sam Ash to see if we could fix it, but it wasn't really worth fixing, But then I worked all summer and wanted to get a bass guitar. So I worked all summer, and then my dad said, well, you know what, you're pretty serious about it. So he put the rest of the money up, and I got an Area Pro 2 bass. Absolutely. They were
back
great.
in the day, I almost bought a guitar, Area Pro 2.
Absolutely. They were great.
Back then, it made them, quality was fantastic.
Absolutely, So that was really my first playable bass, And then someone knew that I was started to play the bass, and they gave me some kind of a junk bass, and the neck was shot on it. Like my dad and I tried to pull the frets and make it a fretless bass for some reason, to be like the cello, I guess. But basically we refinished it and we put it together, and that was another one of my first basses, and I still have that one too.
Oh, you still
absolutely.
Okay. So at an early age, you got in there and started tinkering with it and
absolutely.
fixed it. So that kind of paved the way for you on how you can, which we're gonna, like I said, a lot to cover with this guy. How you have these custom-made basses that. So that was the springboard that you, at that point. You had the bass, you fixed it, you wound up getting another one,
absolutely.
And you just stayed with it.
And that was the passion behind it. That was a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I went to a local pool, like the Mineola pool had these like teen parties, and there was a band playing, and I saw a bass player that played in that band. He was doing like all the slap stuff and everything. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a bass too. I never really heard it before. And so I actually went up to him. His name is Rich Passariello, and he lives right in Westbury still. But basically, I asked if he taught lessons. He said, sure I do. So he gave me his number on a napkin. I didn't call. And I guess, I don't know why, but I guess it wasn't time yet. And then I started playing a little bit more seriously. And then a mutual friend of mine,
I like, yeah.
So this mutual friend of mine who is actually Guy Marché, who was one of the founders of the death metal scene on Long Island. So, he was in Suffocation, he was in Internal Bleeding, those guys. We grew up together. So he said, my mom works with this guy, he's a bass teacher. So he's like, I'll get you his number. So he gave me his number. It turns out it was the same guy from the pool. And, so finally I called. And it was him that, fortunately, I was, big into like metal, a lot of the rock stuff at the time. I was a huge Queen fan, since I remember hearing like, We Will Rock You when I was a little kid, and I was like, whoa.
Just those drums.
Oh, man. And then I probably would have been a guitar player, because as soon as that guitar solo kicked in, I'm like, playing air guitar and all that stuff, So, yeah, Brian May is one of my biggest musical influence, I would say, But it was Rich that introduced me to Stanley Clarke, to Stanley Clarke.
More of a jazz fusion.
Absolutely. The Dixie Dregs, Andy West,
God.
And, that in addition to like Iron Maiden, at the time too, actually, kind of gave me a really nice broad perspective on music, Again, my parents weren't real big music listeners, but my father was also an usher at the Paramount Theater in New York City, way back.
That's underneath the garden, or was?
I don't even know.
Oh no, that was the Felt Forum.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I remember him telling me that about Ella Fitzgerald, and how him and my uncle used to sneak out at night to go to see these shows at 2-3 o'clock in the morning to see like the old jazz greats in New York, because they would do a gig, and then they would basically go to after hours places and play all night
long.
So, even though I didn't have a lot of that music, in front of me, I was able to, kind of get excited about it too.
Yeah.
And then, and basically that moved on to upright bass and all that kind of stuff.
And you did that for a while, and we were talking just before that really wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I think my reasons for playing upright bass, were more about the instrument and the melodic function of it, and so that was a kind of an interesting story. But so let's see. I'm kind of fast forwarding quite a bit here,
yeah.
but basically, let's see. I should probably step back and kind of tell another part of the story first. So, but one of my first experiences was with I was about 14, and we were in high school, and there were these girls from the neighborhood and from the local high school. And I'd only been playing bass for about maybe 6 months, at most, and maybe a year. And they said, we're working on this doo-wop project with this guy, and we're looking for musicians. Would you want to come down, for an audition? So I was, thank God I said yes, because you think you're 14 years old listening to metal and speed bass playing and stuff, doo-wop, but absolutely. Turns out that the producer on it and writer was Steve Tudanger, who was the founder of the Archies. That song, Sugar, Sugar.
Oh, sure.
Ba-ba-da-ba-ba. So, and Ellie Greenwich from the Ronettes, was very good friends, so she would actually come into rehearsals. They wrote a lot of the music together. And at the time, they were also working with Cyndi Lauper, so it was an incredible time, So that was one of my first real professional experiences. It didn't go that far, but it was that I always kept in touch with Steve. And when it was kind of looked like it was going to be breaking up, I'll never forget, we sat down in his kitchen, and he said, John, he's like, I really want to say something. He's like, you really need to continue this. You need to pursue this. He said, you have an ear for music. And again, I was only playing for maybe about a year, maybe a year and a half at that stage. And he said, you really need to continue this.
Wow.
And, and I think it's even bigger that I look back at it now, At that time, maybe I appreciated it, but maybe not as much
But
as
see,
I
he
do
saw
now.
something.
Yeah, that was it. And that was
Said
just
and coming from someone like that, that's pretty cool.
that was the thing, and when it came time for me to, I always kept in contact with him. When it came time for me to go to college, he said, "Listen, Ellie and I will write you recommendations to any college you want. We can get you into Berkeley, we can get you into pretty much any music school." And I was kind of going between where I didn't know if I was going to go to music school or possibly engineering school, or I was really into, I volunteered at a school for disabled kids. And so I was thinking special education, something like that. So he actually came to my house, and spoke to my parents and said, I really want John to go to music school. So it was really, it was a little bit of a tough decision. But then I ended up choosing engineering school. And because I thought about it and I said, well, you know what, maybe what if I didn't make it? And that's always
something to fall back on.
That's right. That's always in people's minds. And it's really the unfortunate dilemma with most musicians, And but I vowed to Steve, I said, I will go to engineering school, but I am going to study music. So I sought out professors from one of the local colleges, from Five Towns College, and I took private bass lessons from one of the teachers there, and on upright. So, and my goal was to learn, I really wanted to learn the bow. I wanted to learn classical music. I wanted to learn jazz. I wanted to really learn all aspects of the instrument itself.
Yeah, like you didn't just want to be metal and just flash out.
That's right.
You wanted to learn every aspect, every genre, every way of playing to
absolutely
kind of master of all
definitely
the genres.
Absolutely. It's like I always say to people, I did a clinic in Ohio back in, it was in April. And one of the things I was telling a lot of the people there was a lot of college kids there. There was a lot of musicians from all walks of life, really, And I really feel that as a musician, if you are asked to do something, a gig, whatever it is, you always want that answer to be yes. You don't want to have anything that is going to restrict you from doing that gig.
Or second guess yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a great sight reader, and the reason is because I haven't had to use it in probably the last, say, 15 years, so it's like very rarely do I have any kind of production where, here's the sheet of music, play it note for note, if I do get something like that, I'll always ask for that sheet of music beforehand, so I can prepare it, but, so that's, but, when you're in this, I see that from the back, looking back on it, So anybody that's studying music or going to school for music, I know there's a lot of people that just kind of get by when they go to, in college. They get by. They kind of fake the reading end of it. Like they memorize it and they pass the test. But learn to read music. Learn to read. You know what I mean? Why not? Why wouldn't you want to?
Yeah.
So when I was in college, this is how I kind of became more involved with the upright bass. I went to college for electrical engineering, and so I was experimenting with pickups for the upright bass. So I bought a bass from one of the teachers that I had. It was like a 1940s, World War II K bass, which is amazing. I love this thing to death. And so he was the one who repaired it for me, and he's like, listen, you go to school for engineering. I have these preamps that keep breaking down, and all the heavy hitters in New York are playing them, but they keep breaking down. Do you think, I got a box of them, do you think you could fix them? I'm like, well, let me take a look. So he gave me the box of them to take home, and sure enough, I found out what was wrong with them, and it was a pretty simple fix. So basically it was shorting to the chassis and blowing the transistor. So I made some adjustments, replaced the transistor, and they were fixed. So I was getting phone calls from every top upright bass player in the world to fix these. So
because this was happening to everybody.
It was happening to everybody, and so I got a call from Rufus Reed. So Rufus Reed is an incredible bass player, educator out of New Jersey. He played with everybody. So Rufus called me, and I said, absolutely, I'll fix it. He's like, well, how much are you going to charge? I said, how about a lesson?
Wow.
Right? So you know what? What good is, okay, I might get maybe $40, $50, right, to repair something, but you have an experience of a lifetime to go to his place and take a lesson from him. So I continued lessons with him. After that, then I get a call from bass player Michael Moore, and not the movie guy, but another one who is more of like a classical type player, and same thing. So how much? How about a lesson? So I took lessons with Michael Moore.
You for your work, your pay was getting lessons from these
Absolutely.
people.
And building relationships.
You can't put a price on that.
And building the relationships. You know what I mean? It's like, and I can't stress that more in any walk of life, really. You know, not just as a musician. I mean, I say to people all the time, too. It's like, okay, you could be the greatest bass player in the world, but if you're someone that people don't want to work with, you know, if you're nobody wants to work with you. So you know what? It's work ethic, you know, and you know you have to appreciate what you have and what you do, and you know, I mean, a lot of it's personality, you know. So I think a lot of, you know, getting ahead, whatever that is in the music world, is personality, persistence, and skill. You got to have something to back it with, you know.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. So that was like a lot of. So the engineering side of my life opened up a lot of doors in the music world, you know. So
it's like more of the technical end.
That's right, you know. And then a lot of these guys got to know me as a player, you know. So it's like, so that was what opened the door.
So it's the best of both worlds.
Absolutely, you know. And I, you know, I always say I probably lived the life of about 10 people so far. I'm not that old yet, but.
Well, all I know is you've, done TV theme music for certain shows.
Sure.
Movie scores. You have albums up with your band My World,
Yeah.
which is actually, I want to talk about that for a little bit. I would have to describe that music. I mean, some people say, well, what do they sound like? It's not Primus. It's not this, that, the other thing. I would have to say that it's controlled chaos is what your music sounds like.
Sure.
Because in 2 minutes and 38 seconds, you go from one extreme to the other.
Right.
And you just got to strap it and just enjoy the ride. You know, and that's what every one of your compositions do. It reminds me of, funny that you said that you were influenced by Queen, because you're a risk taker when it comes to your music.
Yeah.
And Queen was like that. You didn't know what you were going to get when they were coming out with it, but you looked forward to it.
Right.
And you know, listening to your records that you came out and released is the same thing. It's like, you know, you go from this to that to the other thing. It's like subsonic. It's just, it's crazy. Is that contrived, or is there a reason for that, or is just, you know, that's what you think and that's what comes out?
I think that's what kind of comes out, you know, because I mean, I've been playing with Chris Munger, the guitar player in My World.
Big shout out to Chris Munger, who couldn't be here tonight. God bless him. Man,
Chris is like, you know, I mean, we've known each other since high school, you know, so we've been playing together ever since. And you know, how we met was, I was a big Dixie Dregs fan, and I was from Mineola. He was from New Hyde Park, and people said, there's this other guy from New Hyde Park that he's a big Dregs fan too. I'm like, yeah, oh cool, great, you know. And I think so between that and Frank Zappa's music as well. It's like there wasn't a lot of people our age that were into that kind of music.
Yeah, that's very eclectic.
Absolutely, you know.
Few people that were into that music.
Absolutely, you know. So we had always heard of each other. And then finally, a mutual friend, we got together and Carmelo Schifano's basement. Carmelo, I know we're friends on Facebook. We got, and that was the first time I met Chris, and we've been playing ever since. So he's like a big, everything from like Jeff Beck to, Steve Morse. That was always our thing. But it's really both of us. We'll come up with some kind of wacko idea, and we'll try to make something out of it. Some things we do are more song based, some are more composition based.
Right.
But I think from a performance standpoint, we really try to make something that we try to make it a show. Because most original music stuff, it's usually say about a 40-minute set. So we always kind of hit hard and fast, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of the stuff that we do that's like a little more on the low-key stuff. Mm-hmm. But, when we do a show, we want to make that impression, so...
Last time you guys played here, it was just like, it was very fierce. It was like, if you wanted to make an impression, you definitely did on me. That's
awesome.
without a doubt.
Well, that's it. And Chris's personality comes out on the guitar.
So now you guys... you grew up in Mineola.
Uh-huh.
Your base is pretty much New York City as far as playing.
Right.
And beyond,
sure.
When you can. But you guys worked together. You guys did something with Comedy Central.
That was a really cool experience because, again, talk about things that come out, opportunities that come your way from personality and skill at the same time. Right out of school, Chris started working in the mailroom at Comedy Central. That was his very first job outside of college. So Comedy Central was very small at the time. They didn't have their hit shows yet. So Chris, we were always playing together, and so everyone from Comedy Central would come out and see us play. So they always came out, and so whenever we do a show, that was part of our circle of friends.
Right, all those people involved.
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
So we used to actually play the Comedy Central parties. So they'd have company parties, and they'd bring us in, and because they just loved what we did. So one day, the head of Comedy Central at the time came into the mailroom and said, "I want you guys to watch something." So, okay. So he gives us a VHS tape, and says, "I need you guys to watch this. Let me see. I want to see what you guys think." So we took it home and we watched it. And it turns out it was the very first episode of South Park. And so they were thinking of picking it up at the time. So I'm glad they didn't listen to me, because when I watched it, I was like, it was the episode where
tell me what episode it was.
It was the episode where Jesus and Santa Claus got into a fist fight. So it was pretty extreme as far as TV is concerned. So I was like, I don't know about that, And so luckily they did not listen to me. So, but they picked it up.
And it's still on the air, I believe.
It's still on the air. And Comedy Central exploded. Absolutely exploded. And so we, again, when Comedy Central exploded, we were still with them. So we always played a lot of their events and stuff. Now, the theme song for South Park was done by Les Claypool from Primus.
Right.
And that was at the time where they came to us and they said, "Listen, we're going to roll out a website for South Park. Would you guys be able to do the music for it?" So we did the music for the South Park website at the time.
So they did the theme song for the show. You guys did it for the
for the website. So we did all the compositions. So needless to say, like Comedy Central again blew up, and all the people that were there, because they knew Chris so well. Chris was basically he was almost like the mayor of Comedy Central. He knew everybody. And so as the people moved on from Comedy Central, for example. One of the guys went on to head up Fox, the big honcho at Fox, VH1, Fuse. Every major.
They kind of just splintered off into every other.
Absolutely right. And with all of those people going on to all these other TV stations, they all knew Chris, and they knew me too, but more so Chris, So anytime that anybody was working on a TV show that needed music, they called up Chris. Can you guys do this? So Chris has made an incredible career for himself aside from playing, but being involved in a lot of productions, TV productions, film productions. And it's really, that was the impetus for us having a long-lasting career in composing music for TV, and so that's, again, the same thing I always try to instill in people. It is connections. It is who you know. But when you meet those people, you want them to want to know you. It's like you can shake hands with people like, hey, I'm the greatest thing in the freaking world. Hey, I'm awesome. I'm great. Doesn't mean a damn thing. You know what I mean? It's like if you can talk to somebody and you can relay what you do, it's like interviewing for a job. It's like if I come to you for a job, you don't know me, okay, well, you're taking a risk by hiring me because you don't know me, right? So if you have a reputation with somebody and a relationship, why would they want to hire somebody else but you? Yeah. As a musician, there's always someone ready to take your place. It's like you see it in any kind of a band, any kind of a TV thing or any kind of production. It's like there's plenty of musicians out there, a lot that are better than me, a lot that are better than Chris. It's like there's better musicians, but people come to us because of what we do, because they know that we're good at what we do, but also they know that we are going to deliver what they want, deliver it with a smile, without an attitude, and we can work together with them, so it's like, that's the magic. Everyone is kind of says, making it in the music business. Well, what is making it in the music business?
Yeah.
I don't even know. You know what I mean? It's like so far so good, we're able to do stuff in it, but that's, so again, we have a lot of stories, a lot of stuff. We've kind of lived, done quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, and that's the way it should be. You leave an impression on people that they're going to want to have you back. And that's important. So right now we're at My World, and how did that come about? You and Chris obviously shared the same musical influences.
Absolutely.
And we're working together, so a bond was obviously created. And did you guys start working on music together?
Well, we've had a band called My World since we were in our teenage years.
Oh, so this goes
way back.
Okay.
And it's like we had kind of stopped for a little bit, because again, the industry changed a bit, and we were getting really busy with the TV and film stuff, of course, and we did a couple of the different projects together, and then we got a lot of attention from a lot of like bigger acts, that we got a chance to work with because of My World, because they saw what we did. But also too, I guess it was about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, where we hadn't really done a My World thing in a few years. And then Chris and I had got signed to BMG, music publishing, we got our publishing deal.
BMG Chrysalis, right?
It was BMG Chrysalis. Now they cut off the Chrysalis. Now it's just BMG. So, but yes, definitely. So we got signed with BMG individually. Chris he had the relationship there, so he was signed first. Then he was able to bring me in, and then we did just for kicks, we did a Hurricane Sandy benefit in New York City, and we were already working with BMG, and then a lot of the BMG people came and supported us at the show, for the benefit, and so we got a call and said, we want to have a meeting on Monday. So, okay, cool, so that was the first time they heard My World as a band, and so they said, well, what are your plans for the band? And so we look at each other. I don't know. I mean, we're not 25 years old, going to get in a Winnebago, travel across the country, and eat McDonald's. You know, I mean, so basically they said that we have a distribution situation here at BMG. It just started, and a new label. We'd like you guys to be the first. So they actually signed us as My World, you know, and so we're signed individually plus as My World too, and again regarding the relationships, you know, it's, you know, we did our first album, you know, that we released through them, and then they kind of stepped away from the distribution thing, but we had, you know, basically we had such incredible treatment from them, you know, because of the personal dealings that we had with them. I mean, the person that we reported to was not an A&R guy, but it was like the head of new business development, you know, which was a totally different animal. Because, you know, a lot of bands know that if you're signed to a label or something like that, you have an A&R person. And not that it's a bad thing, that's the way it works, you know, but you are usually one of many, you know, bands that are signed, you know, report to an A&R person. This is a different animal. So we received almost like personal special attention in a sense that, like, hey guys, this opportunity came up. Are you guys down? Sure, absolutely.
Bang, right out of the gate.
That's right. You know, we have this. Are you guys down? Or let's try setting you guys up with these people. Let's see if you can make something work with that. Okay, well, that doesn't work so well. How about this? You know what I mean? So it's, you know, and their philosophy is that what you guys do as in TV and film advertises what the band does, advertises the band, and what you do as a band advertises what you guys do as individuals or in TV and film. So it's kind of like a synergistic type relationship, you know. So, and our deal too was that, you know, we wanted to do whatever we could to preserve that relationship. And so we're going on 5 years, maybe a little more than that. And it's been fantastic. It's really been great.
That's amazing.
You know, so
and you played pretty much a lot of prestigious places
in
and around the city. There's one that you do every year. If I'd like to just mention that real quick. Yeah,
sure. Well, we usually do a World Trade Center show, you know, so basically I don't know if they're doing it this year, so it's not confirmed yet.
But you usually do it every year that they...
That's right. You know, they have like right in the courtyard there, they have like a summer series, you know, so, and it's great because it's right outside of BMI's building, which is our pub, not BMG, BMI, so
which is your home,
which is perfect because, you know,
that's got to be a prestigious honor to be able to ask to play that
absolutely.
Each and every year.
Sure. You know?
Well, you know what? Speaking of My World, I was wondering, can we get a little? I mean, I did a lot of talking, but I think people are like, just shut up and let this guy play. So would it be all right if I get you to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to do stuff without Chris, you know, so because Chris is a very important part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably fumble through My World song.
Okay.
I know Rob Noxious is here.
See, one of the things here is we have a live audience with us.
I love it, man. I love it.
And occasionally we have rock stars in the house.
And we do.
It just seems we have one Rob Noxious from the band Kill Code.
Absolutely.
Who's hanging out. And, you know, if you're not too busy, would you like to come up and play in some drums with John?
We could just do like the little rhythm thing if you want. We could try like maybe Shatter the Sun or something like that, a little acoustically. I don't know. But yeah, Rob Noxious. He's from the band Kill Code, and he's been basically working with us in My World for the last 2 years. Rob is just fantastic. He's like one of those people that he's a great drummer. Again, talk about personality. You know, really great person to work with, great player. You know, I couldn't ask for anyone better than Rob, that's for sure. See, he's even like looking at the drum set to see if he can play. He's not like, no, I don't want to play.
I completely put him on the spot. He's taking me up on it. There isn't a pedal? Okay. Okay. Well, do you think while they're getting that together that we could?
Sure.
You could, because now I want to get to the gear portion.
Absolutely.
Because there is a lot of gear to talk about right here. So, this particular bass you told me you were going to bring, and I just think it's gorgeous. It's exotic looking, and there's a history. There's a history behind it.
Well,
So
now,
I'm going to shut up, and Nick, if you can kind of get this.
especially Long Islanders are going to really appreciate
Very
this.
cool.
Again, talk about like stories. I spent a lot of time building instruments at a point in my life, and I'm sure we'll get into that later too. But I was kind of looking around Long Island to see if I can get a piece of walnut to experiment with, and so I went to a number of places, and none of the lumber yards really stock walnut. So I went to this one place and was talking to him for a while, and he said, "Well, what are you looking to do?" I said, "Well, I want to experiment with an instrument." So he was fascinated by instrument building. He's like, wait a second, let me see if I have something that might work for you. So he goes up into like a little loft area, and he brings down this plank of wood, which is probably about maybe 5.5 feet tall, about 2 inches thick, a lot of sap wood, a lot of like cracks in it. And he said, "Well, would this work for you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, that's great." He's like, "Well, let me tell you a little bit about this piece of wood." So he said, about a number of years before, he said there was a barn in East Setauket, and they called it the George Washington Spy Barn. So evidently this barn was on a piece of property that belonged to one of George Washington's, the leader of his spy ring. So the house was considered a monument, but the barn was in considerable disrepair, and it had to be leveled. And he commissioned the wood from the barn. So this was a piece. He said a furniture builder bought most of the wood. This is a piece that he saved for himself, but it had been sitting around for a while. So he said, "I'd really like to, see something pretty cool done with it." So I had this piece of wood. He gave it to me, and I sat on it for a while because I was trying to think, wow, if I'm going to do something, I got to do something really good, So I decided I wasn't going to do it myself. I've had a relationship with Mike Tobias from MTD Basses for years, and that's a cool story too. But for a long time, and Mike's made a number of basses for me, and so I brought the piece up to Mike, and so he said he would love to do a bass. So basically, this bass is pretty much made out of entirely walnut. So basically, there's the top part, there's the back, which is a little bit more figured, and we figure we put the figured stuff on the back because if we put it on the front, most of it will be cut away, would be hidden by the neck joint and the pickup holes and everything. So we put the pretty stuff on the back, but the neck is entirely walnut except for a couple little stringers in here just to give it a little more stability. So basically on the headstock here, he wrote, I got to see this. I need glasses. I don't have them. But the George Washington bass. So basically, I didn't want to make it loud and obnoxious looking, So, but as like a little bit of a tribute, on the 12th fret, this is an inlay of George Washington's flag. So basically, during the Revolutionary War, he had a single flag which was blue, blue with 13 white stars. So we figured we put that as the inlay on the 12th fret here. So
that is so cool. So this bass was made out of wood from George Washington's spy barn in 1901.
So the year. Let's see. No, long. So that was in the Revolutionary War was 76.
17.
So this wood was from that barn. So we're talking like a really old piece of wood. So and it was interesting because I didn't even know about it, but there was a TV show called Turn. I think it's on Netflix or something like that, which was all about George Washington's spy ring. So this is, again, from the wood from that barn where they would meet. So so a little bit of Long Island history here.
That's very cool. Give it up for that, yeah.
So, but
and this again, Michael Tobias.
Yeah, Michael Tobias from MTD Bases. Mike, I met.
He's like your go-to guy with your basses.
Yeah, it's like I've had this relationship with Mike since my 20s. I was ready to buy a high-end bass, and I went into Rudy's in New York City, and I didn't know what I wanted just yet. So I looked at some different instruments, and then I saw an MTD bass. So I tried it. I was blown away, and so I put some money down on it, and then I was called to do a TV show to play on. Wow, was it the Maury Povich show? I think it was Maury Povich show.
And you were basis for it.
So so basically, the person I was called to back up was a 5-year-old Hunter Hayes. So Hunter Hayes, I think he's like a big country star now. I had a lot of Disney hits and stuff. So it was a 5-year-old Hunter Hayes. So I asked Rudy's if I could use the bass for the TV show, and they said, "Well, you're going to have to call Mike." So I called Mike Tobias, and he said, "Absolutely, no problem." So without fully owning the bass yet, I played on the TV show, and from that point forward, that was my relationship with Mike. And so we've done about 4 custom basses, and then he also has a line called the Kingston series, which is they're the import basses. So they're great because you can modify them. Like I changed the hardware, I put different pickups in it, and so I kind of Frankenstein those, when I need to or want to, So and they're great because I wouldn't say there's a few that are entry level, in the couple $100 type thing. But you can get like a really high quality bass for about $1,000, and it's the same layout, not the same thing as the handmades, but the same layout, so the familiarity is there. So if I switch from like one of the handmade ones to one of those,
it's almost there.
It's right, exactly. It's like you don't notice that much of a difference. There's a familiarity because that's kind of what I'm used to playing, especially with my world. It's like with a lot of other projects, I'll use whatever bass fits the gig. If I have to do like a fashion week thing, it's like, or like a specific visual is necessary, something more vintage, then I'll switch to another type of instrument for the visual,
Right.
And then sometimes it's, just from like the hip hop history, and I'm sure we'll get into that too. But, it's like a lot of basses that I've used in the hip hop world were more traditional style basses, so if you want to recreate the sounds of the 60s or the 70s or something like that, instead of trying to emulate it, I basically use an instrument that I can get it, and I know how to get it from my recording engineering background too, to kind of get that vibe.
So, but also it's aesthetics.
Absolutely. That,
when it comes to
it sounds cheesy, but a lot of it is. I mean, it's like, hey, my original MTD bass is completely worn over here. There's like a divot where my thumb goes. I beat the crap out of that thing, and that's been all over the world with me. And it's like, and that's pretty much one of my go-to bass. It's like something about it. And but again, it's like I've done sessions before. This is a funny one where I got a call from an A&R guy from RCA Records at the time, and he said, "I want you to play bass on this 4-song EP from this artist." And I said, "Well, okay, well, what kind of bass should I bring?" So it's like, whatever you feel. So I bring a fretted MTD and a fretless bass, and I get to the gig, and the singer looks at the bass. I take it out of the case, and he looks at the bass, and he's like, "I hope you're not going to use that." because it looks like this. They're expecting. He's like, "Don't you have like a Fender or something?" So fortunately, I didn't live that far away. So I went back and I got I got my Fender. But yeah, aesthetics is a certain thing. Certain basses are more playable, for certain things than others. I have other basses that you can't really, you can't move that fast around because it's, maybe the tension is different,
So you need something that's a little bit more responsive.
Absolutely.
And, has that snap, crackle, and pop.
That's right. And that's with the My World stuff. With a lot of the My World performance stuff, I'm singing and playing. So it's like, with that, you kind of need something that's a little bit more, it's my MTDs are really, that's where it's at,
So how many of those particular basses do you own?
I have 4 customs. You have my initial one.
You designed from the ground up with Michael? And
well, the first one I got from Rudy, so that was as is. And then there was another one that I had a piece of a camphor burl, which looks like they have like little tiger paws in the actual wood itself. That was my second one. And then a third one, and that was a funny one too. I went into a guitar center in Carl Place, and I saw this bass hanging on the wall, and it had an MTD neck on it, but it was like a single cutaway, so it didn't have this cutaway in it here. And so to me, it looked like someone took an MTD neck and put it on a body that they made. So I took a picture, I sent it over to Mike, and I said, "Mike, is this one of your basses?" He said, "Yeah." He's like, "I made that for Blaze Sissone from the Family Stone." So Blaze plays with the Family Stone. And and it's great, it's hysterical because this bass is like, it's huge for me. It's like the body is about this big and the neck comes out like this. So this thing is a freaking monster. So it's a little bit awkward for me to play. But it's got a huge sound to it. And when I met Blaze is probably, and I don't mean to, you're not 6'2" like me, so Blaze, if you're listening, which was pretty funny because I can't imagine anyone that's not like at least 7 feet tall being comfortable playing that instrument. So that's my third one, and this is my fourth handmade, and then I have 3 of the imports. 3 of the imports.
All right, so total, how many basses do you own?
Way too many.
More than 50?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But, I think as I was saying before, it's not about owning a lot of basses. I think
they all serve a purpose.
They all serve a purpose, and for me, they all have a story. Like I'm not a collector. I'm not like one of those people that says like, I need to go out and get a 1952, precision bass. No, I don't. That has no sentimental value to me, But like the guys from D'Angelico, D'Angelico guitars, when they had me come out to the NAMM show, and I ended up playing with Skunk Baxter from the Doobie Brothers, from Steely Dan,
wow, and
Gene Cornish from the Rascals, and Robert Randolph, and that was like a jam session that we did, and I played one of their basses, and like they gave me the bass that I played. You know what I mean? So it's like that. I love the bass, don't get me wrong, absolutely. But what has even more of a personality to it is the fact that I played that on that gig, that I played it with those people, So, and most of my instruments have that kind of a story, where I can say, hey, this is the bass that I did this on, or this is the bass that I did that on, or I have a relationship with the company themselves. Like I'm a big Hofner fan, and as much of a Beatles fan as I am, I'm not the kind of person to say like I want to get a '63, Cavern, Paul McCartney Hofner bass. It was more that I met the guys from Hofner, and at the time I was doing a lot of the hip hop stuff, and I saw the bass and I was like, wow, that fundamental note is so incredible. That could sit incredibly in a mix. And they were just so ecstatic, that, not that I'm not going to speak for them, but a lot of the Hofner owners or fans are Beatles fans, So it's like you see every Beatles tribute band has a Hofner bass.
The violin bass.
Exactly.
The Paul McCartney bass.
That's exactly it. And that's what people associate it with is the Paul McCartney bass. But I used it for a different purpose, So I used it on countless hip-hop tracks or R&B tracks because it just sits incredibly well. Listen to like Lenny Kravitz's stuff, I think it's Jack Daly. He plays a Hofner in a lot of Lenny's stuff because it has that vibe, And so, like, my Hofners aren't because I'm a collector. It's because of what they do. And no other bass sounds like a Hofner,
It's got a very distinct.
Very distinct.
So you really have from the Hofner to these, both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
To do exactly what it is you want to do and how you want to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing.
So, yeah, man.
So speaking of the hip-hop thing, you've also done stuff with Chuck D, Public Enemy?
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting. That started. I was writing a bass column for a Long Island-based magazine called The Inside Connection, and my good friend Joanne Gullo is the one who started it, and we've been friends since we were kids. Again, kind of like that Long Island upbringing. We had a great group of people that we grew up with, and she's actually managing a lot of the death metal bands now in Long Island, and but she had an event, and one of the guys that I met there his name was Kyle Jason, and Kyle Jason was signed to Columbia Records. He did a project with Chuck D called Confrontation Camp, which was Chuck, Kyle, actually this guy, my friend Wes Little, who's down in Nashville now, and at the time Chuck was starting a record label called Slam Jams Records. So Kyle said, "Well, why don't you come down?" He's like, "I'd love to," We hit it off. We just hit it off. So I went my first jam with Kyle. He was like, "Where the fuck have you been?" Because again, part of my roots are like, like soul and like, I just embraced every different style of music. I'm like a funk fan. I'm like a R&B fan. And so I did 2 albums with Kyle on Chuck's label. Now the producer Johnny Juice, that was there at the time, was working on Public Enemy albums, and so he asked me to play on the Public Enemy tracks. So from that, I ended up doing 2 PE albums. We did a couple of soundtracks, which was pretty cool. We did like a show on ESPN called Ali Rap. It was like a special on Muhammad Ali and how he used to rhyme. So we did a thing with that, and like Herbie Hancock was on that. Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas. So we ended up doing that. That was nominated for an Emmy actually, and then we did Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's movie On the Shoulders of Giants, and so we did the soundtrack for that. So
wow.
So yeah, so I was kind of like the house bass player for Chuck D's record label, for about 4 years. So I got to work with DMC from Run DMC, Mavis Staples. That was pretty wild. We did a track with Mavis Staples.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really cool vibe.
It's like broadening your horizons, playing with these different people.
That was it. And it's like they didn't really do a lot of stuff with live musicians yet. Most of the early Public Enemy albums, except for the stuff they did with Anthrax, they had some live musicians. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't live musician focused. So on one of the Public Enemy albums, we did like a 13-minute jam, and it was basically me, Chris, from My World, and the drummer we were playing with at the time, and Chuck came to see My World, and he was like, "Whoa!" He loved it, absolutely loved it. So Chuck came. We did a couple of performances with Chuck where he came up. We did some Public Enemy songs in a My World set, and. So yeah, but
that's cool.
So that was a really cool, and part of what allowed me to fit in that, was broadening your horizons on your instrument. It's like I really think it's important for people to embrace your instrument for everything that it is and can be. It's like there's no reason to limit your vocabulary. You know, it's like, hey, you know, certain styles of music might not be your thing. And if it's not your thing, you might not develop the fluent language, you know, in that style, you know. But you know what? If you got it in you, why not? Just do it. You know what I mean? So, like a lot of the clinic stuff, the same thing. It's like I always talk to like a lot of, you know, young musicians, older musicians, whoever it is. It doesn't matter what age. You know, so, I mean, there were some people there at some of these clinics that are just starting to play the bass. I'm like, perfect, exactly, perfect. Why not? It's never too late to do it, you know? And, you know, again, the music industry is a tough deal, obviously, you know, but I'm sorry, my voice is starting to get crackly. But
what advice would you give someone who's trying to break into the business, a bass player? Take it all in?
Do it because you love it. Because if you're doing it expecting to make a lot of money in it, if that's what you're expecting, then you're probably going to get disappointed. But if you love it and you do it with with passion, people are going to see that and recognize that in anything and everything that you do. You know, it's like, again, it goes back to the personality and the vibe that you exude when you play. You know, like, am I going to get a call from Katy Perry? I don't know. You know, I don't know if I'd ever get a call from Katy Perry. Would I love to do that gig? Of course I would. Damn right I would go up and play with her. You know what I mean? And it's like, why wouldn't I get the call? Because she doesn't know me. You know, but if she knew me, but if it was based on my playing, you know, and my work ethic and my personality and my professionality, there's no reason why I shouldn't get the call. But I might not get that call. So with music, you have to do it because you enjoy it first. Because if you're up there and you're performing and you're playing and people see that you're good at what you do and that you enjoy it, people are going to want to work with you.
It resonates.
It absolutely does. So it's like, you know, when people talk about making it in the music business, like I don't really think of it that way. You know, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to do stuff in music for most of my life. And I've had some pretty cool experiences doing it, you know. Am I going to get another one next month or 6 months from now? Am I going to get another call for a TV show in the next year? I don't know. I have no way of knowing that, you know. So another interesting thing too was bass player. I shouldn't say it, but one of the music magazines.
You were featured on the cover.
No, well, that was Bass Musician.
Yes.
Bass Musician magazine. Absolutely, yeah, that was great. Those guys are incredible.
Great magazine.
Absolutely great people, man. But Bass, one of the other magazines, one time in New York City had like a round table of New York City bass players, and there were some really famous guys there, you know, and I was invited not because I don't know, the editor knew me and I had just done some of the Chuck D stuff, so I was invited, and so some of the guys they had were just top guys, you know, and there was people there that I didn't know. You know, I didn't know their names. That doesn't mean, just because I don't know them doesn't mean they're not incredible players, you know. But they're going around the room, and of course, like Willie was there, you know. So Willie had the greatest gig in the world.
David Letterman.
He was on Letterman every day, you know. It's like he had the greatest job. He has a steady paycheck coming in. You know, I've become pretty close with Bakiti Kumalo, you know, from Paul Simon's band, and you know, he is a guy. I mean, God, man, what an incredible, you know, like catalog of, and just his history, just from coming from Africa. His stories are incredible. But, you know, they were talking to some of the other guys there, and they're talking recording sessions this, sessions that, sessions this, session, more sessions, you know, and it's like, it didn't register in my mind that there was that many sessions to be had, you know, and so I said, when they came to me, they said, well, what's it like being a New York City bass player. I'm like, well, it's pretty damn hard, I wouldn't be able to do what I do unless I had my day gig. And they said, oh, the day gig? What do you mean? Well, at the time I was an engineer, so I said, well, I'm an engineer, and they said, oh, yeah, recording engineer. No, I'm, electrical engineer. And it was like the silence was just deafening, because here's a bass player among all these other guys that admits that he has a day job. And I looked at the camera and I said, I knew I was going to get that reaction. Because the thing is that what a lot of these players, they look at professional musicians, they put everyone on a pedestal, that this person is, has made it in the music industry, and the reality is that sometimes you need to have an alternate income in order to do what you want to do in music.
That you love to do.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you ever see like Revenge of the Nerds?
Yeah.
The end where it's like, I forget his name, but he gets up and he's like, it's like, hey, I'm a nerd and I'm proud, and then everybody starts raising their hand like, well, yeah, me too. I said, listen, I'm like, being a musician and having a day job doesn't make you any less of a professional. It just makes you smart and you're just showing that you need to do what you're doing to be able to do what you love, and, again, there's that crossover where it's like, it's hard, not to think that you have to have a supplementary income as a professional musician. And you don't have to. There are other ways of doing it. You can be in cover bands, wedding bands, and make an incredible living, amazing living. That's not necessarily my thing, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, having a supplemental income doesn't make you any less of a professional. And there's this, black cloud, that
They
everybody
frown upon that.
Oh yeah, and there's no reason for it. God, man, it's like, the fact that you guys have me here, I'm ecstatic. Just to be able to kind of, play in front of people and, share stories and experiences. It really means a lot to me, and I think that when I'm able to shed light on my experiences and what I've done, and why I've done and how I've done the things that I've done. I think that, again, people have to understand that they have to embrace music as a whole. I wouldn't have done all the things that I had done unless I took chances, and said yes to a lot of things, and, hey, building instruments, I was like, what? Hey, cool. Yeah. That led to something else, which led to something else. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting. I'm sorry. I do ramble. So thank you.
Well, that was
much.
pretty amazing.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Thank you. Oh, I think I'm losing my, I'm losing my signal here. Did I lose my, oh, there we go. Cool.
You guys want to do something?
Yeah, let me experiment a little bit. I want to try like, again, it's hard to do without Chris. Want to try like Shadow of the Sun or something like that? Let's see.
It's Live Stage Radio. You are tuned into the ColdShot. Ready to get the proper jam you're happy when you sing it now.
Let's see. How about, you know what?
Rattle any of them off. I'll do it. I'm just thinking with just toms, the better ones to do.
Even if it's just keeping time or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't have a hi-hat on.
Right.
I just got
Let's see.
whatever.
Yeah, 'cause
I'll be able to do something to whatever you do.
let's try Shadow of the Sun. Just even if it's just like a rhythmic thing, And I'll I won't be able to really do like the full vocal. My voice is totally shot.
Yeah, you have to, so I know
Yeah.
where I am.
Oh yeah, no, I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah, my voice is going a little bit. So, all right, let's try to do something here. So again, this is Rough Without Chris, our My World song called "Shadow the Sun." I'm not going to belt on it, but you kind of get a little bit idea what's happening, you know. Sitting in my hole, where is everyone? Tick tock, go away. My cricket clock is done. Oh yeah, plane is going by, blocking out my sun. Like everything I gave, goodbye to everyone. My pictures, history on my wall. Like everything I gave, there's nothing at all, nothing at all. Hand held high, hear me when I sing. Think it's gonna rain, hear me when I dream. Hear me, I don't mind, let it rain on me. I've done my time now, just let me be. Shadow the sun, shadow me. 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 That was cold.
That was cool. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Rob. Cool. No, my voice
Wow.
is really getting wacky.
It's Live Stage Radio. This is ColdShot, Len Pyros, and that was just fucking cool.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, so, I mean, we kind of do some pretty, run the gamut on some different styles of music. That's just kind of like one of our, like a little bit more song-oriented things.
It's got
you
a
know?
great vibe to it and just kind of just goes in different directions. You never know where your stuff is going to go.
That's awesome.
You know? And that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Cool, man. Yeah.
So, in continuing onward with the gear portion,
Sure.
you brought these two other beauties with you.
Sure.
I'd like to know, and the audience would like to know a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well,
And then I guess maybe after that, we might. I think we still good. Oh, well, okay. Okay.
All
All
right,
well, then
no
maybe,
problem.
Maybe we'll just do a little gear on these.
Sure, sure.
ladies, And
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of brought a bunch of different, kind of instruments with me. And again, most of the stuff that I have is kind of more like the history-based stuff.
That's
So this is my MTD, the 635.
that's gorgeous.
So this is a bass that's extremely, extremely special to me. you know, again, talk about stories.
It's a fretless bass?
Yeah, it's a fretless bass. Let me make sure it's in tune. So, yeah, fretless bass in tune, huh? Right. You can lick it, yeah.
What year is that?
Well, this was 2001, I believe. And so some cool history with this one is, so this is a Carl Thompson bass. And
This is the same gentleman that made the bass for
yeah,
Les-
for Les
Les
Claypool.
Claypool.
He made the first piccolo bass for Stanley Clarke.
Wow.
I mean, it was just on the School Days album, you know, I mean, we're talking history. You know, Carl is the one who made the very first 6-string bass for Anthony Jackson. So, so the interesting story behind this was, I guess it was probably 98 or so, probably about 98. I was at my wife's, my girlfriend at the time, we're Sophia, now we're married, but she was born and raised in Brooklyn, and I was getting ready to do a gig, so I was looking for a local music store to get an extra set of strings. So I look in the yellow pages, and I see 171 Court Street, Carl Thompson Guitars. And I'm like, wow, Carl Thompson. I'm like, I know who that is. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, and she lived at 170 something or other Court Street. So basically right next door. So I say to my wife, my girlfriend, I'm like, Sophie, I'm like, Carl Thompson. I'm like, she's like, yeah. So I'm like, you know Carl Thompson? She's like, yeah, so do you. So I'm like, well, I know who he is, you know. And she's like, you know, the guy that we talk to on the street all the time that wears the Gilligan hat. I'm like, that's Carl Thompson. I'm like, so we would talk to him whenever we'd see him on the street. I mean, Carl reminisces at how, like, you know, when they shut off the water in my wife's building, so when they were kids, they went and they took showers at his place. You know what I mean? So they've been very close for years. So her mother chimes in. She's like, I think he makes violins or something. You know, he's got a little shop around the block. So the next day, we go around the block, and sure enough, I look on the walls. I'm like, whoa. And I see Carl Thompson basses. And I'm like, you're Carl Thompson.
He's the guy you've been talking to for this whole time out in the street.
It totally blew my mind, you know? So he's like, yeah, I'm Carl Thompson. And so we hit it off, you know? And he said, well, he's like, if you want, he's like, if you want to come in, I'll teach you how to make basses. So for a long time, pretty much every weekend, I was in Carl's shop helping build basses. You know, sweeping the floors. I always say I was chopping wood, making sawdust. You know, and so during the whole time, we never really had time to build one for me. You know, and I never asked. You know, it was one of those things where I was just so just blown away that I could actually learn from
and
this
just
person.
Be there.
Just to be there.
Just like watch how he does things and just take it all in.
And again, that's the thing.
It's part of the learning.
Personality.
Absorbing everything.
Definitely.
And he probably, because you were so enthusiastic, he probably liked you around.
We're still very good friends, you know. Awesome. And you know, it's the personality thing. I didn't go in there saying, "Hey, when are we going to make me a bass?" You know, it's like, or you know, without attitude. That's one thing. Carl is probably one of the most beautiful people in the world. Incredible musician, really incredible musician. He got his start. He was a musician. He played with Billy Ward and the Dominoes. And the reason why he started to build basses is because he was a guitar player. And then he got called to do a gig on bass. So he borrowed a bass from Bob Crenshaw. And it was a Fender bass. And he was really frustrated because every time he took his hand off the neck, it would do this. It would fall. So Carl was like, well, you know what? I'm going to design something that's completely right, correct. So he built his first prototypes. And, you know, one of the things, Carl wanted to make basses that sounded great, played great, and felt great, you know, and that you didn't have to fight. You didn't have to battle the instrument to play it.
It had a good balance to it.
So this is the demonstration Carl always gives when you go into a shop is this. Right?
Doesn't go anywhere. Just
This. When it's on a strap, it sits where it's supposed to sit. You know, it's like, and it's light. It's only about, I think this is only about 6 pounds, and that's heavy for one of Carl's basses, you know? And this is like, it's crazy. It's a 36-inch scale. So the standard bass is 34-inch. A lot of people are making 5, low B strings at 35. Carl does his at 36. You know, to give it that extra tension, you know.
yeah.
So when Carl was like, this is an interesting story too, was when Carl was the person who owned his building, that he had a shop was selling the building. And if anyone knows Brooklyn really well, pretty much forget it. Canarsie, there you go, you know. I mean, buildings are very hard to come by, and everyone's pretty much buying them, knocking them down to build something else. And so Carl had to close his shop. He was looking for another place. So we moved all the machines to my parents' house in Mineola in the garage. So I was doing some like the heavier stuff, like, you know, sizing wood, you know, blocking bodies, that kind of thing. And I never, during my time with him, I never got the experience to finish necks, you know. So it's like, even though I spent a lot of time with him, I blocked bodies. I did a lot of like the, I blocked all the wood for the necks. You know, I did a lot of stuff, you know, but, you know, as far as actually finishing the instruments, I never really got that far because, you know, again, everyone served a purpose there. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things. So at that point, when he closed the shop at first, you know, we took all the machines to my place. I ended up blocking necks, blocking bodies, and bringing them to his apartment in Brooklyn where he would finish them. You know, so he did get another shop, you know, and so he's going full force, and he's got some great guys working with him, just really, really talented people. There's like, one of the guys, Pete Hilton, is making his own basses now, and they're just incredible. He's out in California.
So his people are now making their own
right.
stamp.
That's right,
on the
exactly.
scene. Wow.
With Carl's blessing, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of the stuff with Carl, you know, is that, you know, he's such a genuine person. You know, and he smells bullshitters. You know what I mean? If someone's coming in giving BS, you know, he gets it. He knows, you know. And but he's, you know, for example, I'll never forget this. He got a call from the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and there was a kid, I'll never forget, Alan Duncan, and he had some stuff going on with him, and he had his growth was stunted. So, and he was a big Les Claypool fan. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation called and said, you know, how much would it cost to build a bass? You know, they would fund it to build a bass for Alan. It was one of his last wishes was to own a Carl Thompson bass, sized just for him, you know. And so basically we just did it. We just did it. You know, we did it as fast as we could, and we got a bass to him. Carl called Les Claypool. And there was a Primus show. The kid was in Vegas or something like that. And Les sent a limousine to pick him up, to pick the kid up.
Oh, that's cool.
Bring him to the show and presented him with the bass at the show.
Wow.
And, you know, and that's who Carl is. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, again, just such a beautiful soul, beautiful personality. And, you know, and he makes basses that are players' basses. You know, I know there's a lot of people who collect instruments, and, you know, because he only makes them one at a time. You know, it's like there's no mass production going on. You know, it's not like he gets a whole bunch of stuff from Korea, you know, comes in, then he finishes them. No, everything is done start to finish in his place, you know. So it's like, so there's a lot of collectors that are trying to snap them up, you know. Mm-hmm. But they're players' basses.
Wow.
This is
big difference.
I mean, this is like the most incredible fretless bass I've ever played.
Is that
in my
the
life.
only fretless that you own?
I have a few, but like I have a fretless Hofner that sounds like a Hofner. You know what I mean? But this is just, I mean,
Why 6 strings for you?
A couple of reasons. One of the first things, when I was a kid, I played a 4, because that's what I could get. And I remember seeing like an album cover of John Patitucci, with a 6-string bass. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, So I pretty much jumped right from a 4-string to a 6-string. But what it's done for me, it's a tool, it's because of the multiple strings, the extended range, it kind of allows me to write music as a songwriter almost, even more. I mean, of course, you get the, it's like you can get like the higher, for soloing and stuff like that. It's probably better demonstrated on a fretted, but.
Well, that goes us to our.
Well,
okay.
I'll bring this one back too. But for example, with like a 6-string bass, oh boy, sorry about that. But with the extended range, you kind of get like a little bit of like, you can write songs a little bit differently.
It gives you that little something extra that 4 strings don't.
Absolutely.
Like a more melodicness.
Something, just an extended thing, because, I do encounter a lot of bass players, and there's nothing wrong with it, but who function as bass players, but are not necessarily songwriters. And that's one of the things I always encourage bass players to do, because it's one thing being a supporting bass player, but a big part of music for me is writing songs, and, for me, the 6 strings are an additional writing tool. I can get around on guitar, but not as good as Chris, obviously, but, it's like, but still, it's like, for some reason, the 6 string has like a little bit of a different voice to it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a different voice, on the bass itself, so it's like, it's another tool, and, depending on the type of bass it is, I mean, MTDs are really responsive to me, for me, it's like I can get the action fairly low without it being obtrusive, without noise, so to me, that's another thing that I really encourage all musicians, bass players, drummers, I mean, a lot of the non-traditional songwriting instruments, for example, like a lot of songwriters are piano players or guitar players. You don't associate songwriters as bass players and drummers, because they're technically not, they're more supporting instruments, so, but that's one of the things that I really, try to instill in people, is that songwriting is a big factor, and, it's an aspect that you really have to practice as well, because you can't, they say that everyone has one hit song in them. Well, that's cool, but you have to get it out, number one, it's like, but you don't want just one hit song. You want a number of them. And a lot of times to find more than one, you have to write 10, to get 2, or 20 to get 3, That's, or you could be lucky and, and every song you write will be a hit song, but, but that's pretty much the reason for 6, is to kind of different voice, different voice and a little bit more of a different tool.
Yeah, just kind of adds a little bit more to it.
That's exactly it.
Which will inspire you to go in other directions.
Absolutely, definitely.
It's amazing. Wow. Well, how are we looking? Everything's about to die? Oh, okay.
So we've worn all the cameras out.
All right. Mission complete.
I love it. Totally cool.
Well, I hate to say goodbye, so let's just say until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
I want to thank you very much for spending your time and getting us to know a little bit more insight about what you're about and how you do things.
Well, I really
incredible history.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
And for my first show coming back, back at the settle with ColdShot here on Live Stage Radio, this was perfect. I mean, it had gear, gizmos, gadgets, guitars. I mean, it was the full Monty, and damn, that's fucking cool.
Awesome, man. Yeah.
So I guess we're gonna wrap.
Yeah.
I don't want to wrap it up.
Oh, totally, man.
I guess we're gonna have to.
No, it's gonna be a good summer, man.
But real quick, and I forgive me for not bringing this up sooner, but if you can just tell everybody out here in social media land, where they can find you and your music and tour dates and things coming up.
Sure.
And,
well, basically, we have a website, myworldmusic.com. Everything on the internet is, between Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, is My World Band. We have 2 albums out on iTunes. Our most recent one is Domination. We got a couple of really cool shows coming up. We're going to be doing the Lackawaxen Music Festival in Pennsylvania in July 14th. And that's going to be pretty cool, actually. So it's a little camping thing and combined with a music festival thing. And then we're going to be back here at the Rail in August. Supro Amplifiers and Pigtronics. It's basically one and the same company.
That's going to be...
That's going to be great.
That's going to be crazy.
But they're going to be doing their showcase night, and so they invited us to perform with that as well. So we got some great bands up for that, and Supro makes incredible guitar
and so they're going to have some gear down here.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're into that kind of thing, you know where to be here in August.
Well, we're looking at August, the second week of August, so it's probably going to be the
9th, maybe, or something.
Let me just double check.
It's either the 4th and the 9th, if I'm not mistaken.
It'll be the next
How
one.
would I know that?
I had it on my phone, and then I just shut it off so it wouldn't impromptu. I gotta wait for my phone to boot up. Sorry.
Well, the beginning of August.
Yes, it'll be probably the second or third week in August.
Check his website. Check the Rail website. Check my website.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's going to be all gear, gadgets, gizmos.
Yeah.
And a whole lot more in this guy.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again. Thank you very much.
Listen, my friend, honored. Thank you. So, again, real quick, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to come into your homes tonight, and I hope you liked what we put out there for you. Don't forget, every Tuesday night, Live Stage Radio, Behind the Music with Christina Spano, followed by ColdShot with Len Pyros, and what we are going to promise to do is bring you the area's brightest talent, give them a platform, put a spotlight on them so you get to know them a little bit better than maybe you don't already. So stick with us. Things are going to get great. They're going to get crazy. And thank Lisa and Mike for the Rail for allowing us to broadcast live here in the heart of Smithtown,
Absolutely.
New York. And to our studio audience, yes, we have an audience now. And again, to all you out there in social media land, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week.